G'day from the Kimpton Shinjuku Hotel in Tokyo. I'm not talking to you about Japan though, I'm talking to you about Singapore. In particular, the car that I saw out the front of the Conrad Hotel, a McLaren with Lando's number 4 on it. And in fact, a number of people sent me pictures of this car and a couple of videos prior to the start of the event. So I'm thinking, great, we're going to have really interesting cars that the drivers are going to drive to the track. This was indeed Lando's car. Did he drive it to the track? No. It just sat out front of the Conrad Hotel for those 4 days, maybe even 5, just to garner a bit of publicity. And did it work? You bet, we're talking about it now, aren't we? What was it? It was a 720S, but the livery was similar to the F1 car that raced on the weekend. Was there a Daniel equivalent? Not that I know of. So why didn't Lando drive that to the track? Well, in Singapore, most of the drivers stay at hotels very close to the track, and the walk to the track is probably anywhere from 5 minutes to 15 minutes. So did all of the drivers walk? No. A couple of them rode their scooters in, and I'm pretty sure one drove because I saw Lewis Hamilton's security guy, Lloyd, in one of the cars waiting for Lewis one evening. Now, on that matter, this is an unusual race because the drivers leave the track so late, and most of them, having come from Europe or even the Middle East, they tend to stay on the same time zone, which means late departures. And in fact, there were a whole host of fans waiting outside the swipe gates, and I'm talking devoted fans. And by the way, the only way you can get to the paddock swipe gates in Singapore is to have a certain zone ticket. So not everyone was able to get there, but certainly there were big numbers waiting out there at 2 and 3 a.m. in the morning, and those drivers leave very late. On a couple of nights, Lewis left at 2:30 a.m. because I spoke to some of those fans, and they said yes, they were waiting out there for a long time, just for a glimpse of their favourite F1 driver. I walked back to the Ritz-Carlton on the Thursday night because Nick de Vries was doing a print signing with me in his hotel room. He signed 50 prints, which you can now get online and purchase. And he confessed that since he had that first drive in the Williams back in, what was it, a few weeks ago in Monza, things had gone absolutely crazy. He's now recognised everywhere, and he was as popular as some of the other drivers on that walk back to the Ritz-Carlton. Let me tell you about some other things that happened on the weekend. I was so thrilled to meet Will Arnett. Now, if you've watched Arrested Development or 30 Rock or BoJack Horseman, you probably know this man. I know him best from Arrested Development, and he is an absolute character. He got on famously with Lando Norris's dad, and you can see them in the back of the garage here on race day, with Adam explaining many of the intricacies of the sport to Will from the back of the garage. Will is actually doing a podcast about Formula One, and he's doing it alongside a couple of people, including Mika Hakkinen. Other stars at the track, will.i.am, yeah, I photographed him earlier this year in Saudi. Beautiful man. I love him in the Black Eyed Peas. They were playing on the big stage at the track. Gunther Steiner, yeah, he's a star of Formula One, certainly popular through Drive to Survive, and I'm always thrilled when he plays up to my lens, as he did here in this moment, which resulted in this picture. Oh, and who took the first picture of me taking the picture of Gunther? Well, that's my younger son Jace, who joined me at the track for a very busy weekend. I can tell you, over 4 days, we were there for maybe more than 52 hours at the track, leaving as late as 3 a.m. on the Sunday, and we walked over 52 kilometres. Oh, and did you notice I'd changed from my familiar black bucket hat to a rather more colourful one? Yes, Valtteri Bottas gifted me one of his caps on the Friday morning as he rode into the track on his bicycle. So thumbs up to Valtteri for a new bucket hat, which raised a few comments from other drivers as to why I was wearing his hat. And of course, if any other driver has a bucket hat they want me to wear, I'll gladly model it for them. On the subject of wearing stuff, I did have one of the Red Bull team members come up to me and say, "Oh, I think you took a picture of me earlier coming in." I said, yeah, it was a good picture. And that person said, "Well, look, could you please not use it? Because I didn't have the right sunnies on. We're not allowed to wear the pair of sunnies that I had on." I said, fine. So that's how diligent teams are in terms of if they've done a sponsorship deal with a company, they have to make sure that all of their crew are towing the line. Although I have seen a couple of times drivers wearing non-team watches, and once again a PR person for a driver did come up to me once and say, "Kim, I think you took a picture of X coming up the stairs in Monaco. Please don't use that picture. He shouldn't have had that watch on his wrist." Speaking of watches, there were plenty on offer, and here are some of the watches I photographed for my regular Instagram post about watches of the paddock. And while we're on it, here's my selected handbags of the paddock. A bizarre thing, I know. Why would we be talking about handbags at Formula One? Because it is immensely popular with you. And the other one I do regularly, apart from women and men of the paddock, is shoes of the paddock. And these were definitely the order of the day on a number of crew coming in on the wet day. Now, I know that some of you want to know whether the drivers' watches were set to the right time. Well, I can tell you that Lance Stroll's Gerard Perregaux watch was set to 9 o'clock on the 3rd. It was 7:41 on the 29th. Carlos Sainz's watch was set to 7 o'clock, and I took this at 7:41. Sergio Perez, he was spot on. It was 7:45 when I took this photo. Nick de Vries, well, he's showing the right time, but the date's showing Friday the 25th, and it was Saturday, October the 1st. Lewis Hamilton also had his watch set at the right time, 6:10, but on Sunday, November 20, 21, and it was Sunday, October 2, 2022. And George Russell, yeah, he had the right date, Thursday, September 29. But when I looked at his watch, it was showing 1:09 and it was 5:09 when I took the picture. And then I thought, George, the previous week had his watch perfectly set. So I did ask him a little later in the day, how come you were 4 hours behind? Were you in Dubai or something? He said, I actually was in Dubai, but I keep my watch on that time, so I operate as per the time on the watch. Oh, there was one other funny incident with George Russell. I was taking a photo of this woman for Women of the Paddock, and George happened to walk behind and he sort of clocked me and gave me a smile. And I moved my camera away and took a picture of George, and then I moved back to her. And a few minutes later, George walked back to the garage and had a smile on his face, and he jokingly said, oh, look, apologies for mucking up your Women of the Paddock shot. That made me smile. In fact, Pierre Gasly also said something similar a couple of races ago here in the background, albeit out of focus. And I can tell you that I have a brand new signed photo print offer with Pierre Gasly. This beautiful picture coming out of the Monaco tunnel earlier this year, just 100 copies, all individually signed by Pierre and hand numbered. So you can go to the link in the description below and pick the number you want from the available stock. I mentioned Lewis Hamilton's watch before. What was his fashion like this weekend? Well, I thought this was the standout outfit. Light, bright, perfect for the climate. This one here, well, that would have been darn hard work in the humid climate. A couple of other things I noticed. We had a number of the Las Vegas organising committee at the track, and somebody told me, I have no reason to doubt this, that F1 had bought all of the room stock in Las Vegas, certainly all the major stuff, something like 150,000 rooms for them to offer to the public. If you've tried to get a room in Vegas for next year, you've probably noticed that everything is sold out, and it's more than a year out from the race. Oh, and on the Vegas race, there is a launch party in Las Vegas on the 5th of November this year, announcing the race for next year. Will I be covering that for you? I think I will. So if you're going to be in Vegas for that launch, I look forward to seeing you. Now, let's go to race day. It was Fernando Alonso's 350th race. So all of the drivers joined with him for a photo opportunity, and it did bucket down about hour and a half before the race. I was having the most beautiful dinner in the Williams Hospitality Suite, courtesy of Niall Keating, who is a 2-star Michelin chef, and he can cook up a storm. In fact, there are 2 Michelin chefs in the paddock. The other one's Karl-Heinz Hauser. But when that rain hit, that meant that it was very difficult for anyone to move about the paddock, and I didn't have an umbrella. So in the end, I was lucky to borrow one, and my son and I walked very slowly back to the media centre, taking care that our cameras didn't get wet. I don't know whether you know this, but yes, the drivers lose a fair amount of weight during the race. And I found out that Lando Norris, who normally races around 73 kilograms, would drink a couple of litres of water prior to the start of the race, and then lose up to 4 kilograms and weigh in around 71 at the end of the race. But of course, our winner this year was Checo Perez, and it was great to see the Mexican on the top step of the podium. At Parc Ferme, when I went out there, I did notice that one of the Getty photographers, Mark Thompson, didn't have a ladder. He was at the back of the group, so he just commandeered one of the Red Bull guys, a big burly fella, and said, right, I'm getting up on your shoulders to take my photo. And whilst those photos in Parc Ferme are great for celebrations, often it's the photos out the back of the FIA garage that are perhaps of even more interest, and this one I particularly like, of Max Verstappen, absolutely spent after nearly 2 hours. No, it was 2 hours, wasn't it, in that car in pretty grueling temperatures. And at this particular location, there's hardly any media and very few, if any, fans, so that they can take a moment or two to gather their thoughts, and then they head off to the media pen to fulfill their media commitments. And then my final photos were taken just before 2 a.m. out on the track. This was Red Bull's celebration shot, and I can tell you, it was quite dangerous because these huge trucks are zooming backwards and forwards along the track. There's probably 80 people out there, not too many media, thankfully, but the resultant shots were just lovely. With this shot being the cover shot for my Singapore Grand Prix photo book, which you can order online at kimellman.com. If you loved any of the pictures you saw in this video, you can download them at prostarpics.com. You'll find photo books, signed driver prints, merchandise and wall art available at kimellman.com. And for my best pictures live from the track and all during the week, go to Instagram and search at Kim Illman. Thanks for watching and stay passionate. Which meant they ate breakfast at lunchtime, dinner at, how does that work? They ate breakfast at lunchtime, lunch at dinner time, and dinner late night.